Hey everyone, ever wonder what happens when a so-called love addict meets a narcissist? Let's take that on. So love addiction is a non-technical term for certain relational patterns that are observed in people. A love addict is someone who often gets very quickly into a new relationship and rather intensely. For example, they may get engaged to be married within a few weeks or even months and make epic declarations of love in a short period of time. Personally, I think a better term, maybe a better, more technical term for love addiction may be romantic compulsivity. These can often be intense and volatile relationships when they involve a love-addicted person, but because no relationship can burn brightly forever, as the heat comes off of it over time, these relationships may become more volatile on and off, or just end, and then the love-addicted person will spend almost no time alone, will have almost no time single, and pretty much enter into one more of these new intense relationships almost right away. Love-addicted people are often quite preoccupied with their new relationship, thinking about text messages or communicating with the other person, or wondering what are they thinking and ruminating about the next time that they will see them, and may even have a sort of rather robust romantic fantasy world about the person they love. There's almost a sense of craving, if not actually for the new person, for the excitement that a new relationship brings. There are some folks who would sort of file love addiction into the codependency drawer. I'm not so sure I agree with that. Not all so-called love addicts, or I guess romantic compulsives, are necessarily also sex addicted. I don't know that they're codependent. I also don't think that they're necessarily sex addicts. For example, in a love addicted person, we won't see things like obsessive pornography use or multiple brief sexual encounters. Love addicts tend to go in emotionally deep on one person. Intense sex may be part of the new relationship, but that's not the high. The high comes from the romance and the love story and the fantasy fairy tale of it all. A love addict tends to get lost in the new relationship, often to the neglect of friends, work, school, or even other responsibilities, or at least phoning it in to those other responsibilities. And similarly, when the relationship is not going the way the love-addicted person wants, they will also be completely preoccupied. Because a person who is a love addict doesn't have that time down, that time alone or single between relationships, the cycle just keeps repeating, and people and romance for love-addicted people become more about dopamine and the story than about depth of intimacy. I have worked with actually more than a few love-addicted clients in my time, and there's a lot of storytelling in these relationships, a sort of obsessive overfocus and trying to figure out things about this person they love, and often like red flaggy stuff. Like people who are love addicts will say, oh my gosh, this relationship's so magical, this person's so magical. They say they can't put it into words. Folks, if you can't put your relationship into words, you have a problem. Now, some love-addicted people may be narcissistic. Some, not all, certainly, though we're more likely to see the narcissism overlap with sex addiction. Now, the grandiose, fantastical love story piece is definitely something we may observe in some narcissistic people, especially the ones who struggle with being alone. In general, many narcissistic folks are extroverted, mostly because they need the supply. The grand romantic gestures or what they prefer instead of the more day-to-day stuff of intimacy. They are often swept away in what I refer to as the top of the cupcake, the excitement of meeting new people, the flirtation, the attention. And in this manner, love addicts, and especially narcissistic love addicts, may be more prone to things like emotional affairs. But most love-addicted people are not narcissistic. Love addiction can reflect attachment issues. We may see anxious or anxious avoidant attachment with emotional dysregulation, histories of trauma or other relational disruption, poor models for intimate relationships from childhood, and helping create healthier working models of the self, other people, and of relationships is often the path forward when you're working with someone who is a love addict. So in that, what you're hoping for is that relationships don't become a place for the love-addicted person to regulate, but rather a place to meaningfully connect and have a reciprocal interaction without them losing themselves. All of that said, let's go back to the original premise of the video. What happens when a love addict meets a narcissist? The answer? It's a mess. Like a big, colossal mess. Let's take it from the start. The love bombing will draw a person who's prone to love addiction in with tremendous intensity. It plays into the hopes and schemas of the love-addicted person. The love-addicted person's romantic ideal is often served. And remember one piece about love bombing. It's not all fairy tale fantasy all the time. The love bomber plays the game of being all in and then going cold, all in and then going cold. And that backing and forthing sets up a pattern we call intermittent reinforcement that is basically irresistible, especially if you are attracted to someone. And for a love addict, this intermittent love-bombed thing can literally pull them into an abyss of obsessing over why they didn't text. We had such a great time. What did I do wrong? And hours or even days, sometimes even weeks, can be lost in this rumination. The tricky bit is that after 2 or 3 days of the narcissistic person not responding, and then the narcissistic person shows up again, instead of the love addicted, and frankly most people, saying, hey, that wasn't comfortable, or that didn't feel like a healthy way for us to communicate, what instead happens is that the person in the relationship is so relieved that the narcissistic love bomber is back in touch that it may pull people, especially love-addicted folks, in even deeper into these relationships. The love-bombed, intensely romantic phase of these narcissistic relationships usually run their course somewhere between 6 weeks and 9 months. And by then, the love-addicted person is all in and then some. Then the relationship will slide into devaluation. The narcissistic person has gotten the top of the cupcake, and the love-addicted person still wants the intense romanticity. Romanticity? Is that romance? But once the supply is locked down for the narcissist, the heavy lift no longer makes sense for the narcissistic person, at least not as often. And at this point, the narcissistic person may be voicing more of their frustration at this unfortunate love-addicted person, and they may be more dismissive, contemptuous, invalidating, and manipulative. And the love-addicted person is still all in on the intensity and the romantic narrative. So this shift can actually be quite destabilizing, more than average for a person who has this romantic compulsive sort of pattern. And this is where we may sometimes either see volatility when the love-addicted and the narcissistic person start getting into more contention and conflict, or intense self-blame and an attempt by the love-addicted person to try harder, or even negative emotions like sadness, deflation, anxiety, and despair. As the relationship slides into devaluation, the narcissistic person becomes sort of blasé, detached, disconnected, disinterested, and this can actually become quite unsettling for a person who is a love addict. It literally can feel like a physiological abandonment. And as a result, people who are in this situation where the narcissistic person is sort of diffident and disinterested may report literally feeling physically ill. When a love-addicted person and a narcissistic person get into a relationship together, and the relationship starts sliding into devaluing and discard and hoovering, things become very, very messy. You may see acting out on both sides, breaking up and making up and sort of flirting with other people to make the other one jealous and all kinds of stuff. You see desperate attempts to get the narcissistic person back in line and interested. The love-addicted person may become so distracted that they actually really harm their lives become a mess. They may get into trouble because they're so distracted. They may not be an available caregiver to people who count on them, such as their own kids. They may burn bridges with friends and lose social support. The romantic relationship becomes all-encompassing. And because narcissistic people kind of like makeup cycles, because it keeps things exciting, novel, and rewarding for them, this can go on for a while. But sometimes it does end. And then the love-addicted person, when we most hope they will take a break, do the work, and find themselves, they will instead often look for and find a new relationship. Listen, folks, this love addiction thing, it's not that common. Don't listen to this and say, ooh, this sounds like me. I mean, it might be some of you, but not a large number of you, because there's not a large number of people out there who are having this issue. It may be some of you because new relationships, sex, love, that's all heady, dopamine-y, reward in the brain stuff. And it does throw us off kilter. That's why there is so much poetry and songs and art about love. It's been rocking our world since we have been a species that needs to bond for a long time with each other. We are not one and done mammals. We tend to hang out with each other, and the whole love thing facilitates that. But when the love story, the romance, the being in a relationship becomes the only thing to the detriment of everything else, that's an issue. And as a result, when a love addict gets into a relationship with all the roller coaster rides with a narcissistic person, it can be very harmful to that person who has a love-addicted pattern who gets into that narcissistic relationship, because they will not be handled gently. In a way, they can easily be taken advantage of and can really face major psychological crisis as a result. I don't know, maybe we all feel like love addicts when we're going through the roller coaster ride of a narcissistic relationship. But the best antidote to a narcissistic breakup, I don't care who you are, is always going to be time alone. However, if you do truly believe that you are struggling with love addiction, we have put some resources and information in the video notes, and therapy also becomes an important tool to understand and address this pattern. Thanks again.